And you're also targeting 100 crore. Be honest with me, is this a real plan or is it just number you have to say to keep your investors happy?
We're struggling right now. I think I'm not able to forecast what 100 crores will look like on my supply chain.
The file says that your revenue went from 8.7 crores to 21.4 crores in 2 years, roughly 145% growth. Give me the real story.
Funding money, that's the real story. You get money, you can pump it into marketing. I would be lying if I said, oh, we want to build a D2C brand. We don't have a choice anymore.
But if you scale so fast, what is the first thing you think will break in your company?
We are literally cut to cut supplying. Last year was a loss-making year for us. I would love some money.
Have you ever considered selling Fix My Calls? Have you received an acquisition offer in the last 12 months? Is there a competitor whose product you secretly think is better than yours?
I deny the answer.
Everything you say in this room can and will be recorded. Even if you remain silent, that will be noted. So, Anshita, state your name, crime, and profession for the record.
My name is Anshita Mehrotra. I'm the founder of a curly and wavy haircare brand called Fix My Curls. And I don't think I've committed any crimes.
So, do you know why you've been brought in here, Anshita?
No.
You stand accused of this one crime: selling self acceptance to a generation of curly women and then including Fix in your brand name. How do you plead? Guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Then let's start the interrogation. So, Anshita, you were born in Banaras, raised in Cambodia, and then went to Pathways Aravali. Then flew to Vancouver for a university. Which one of these actually made you?
Probably Pathways Aravali actually made me, because I spent the most amount of my teenage years there, where I feel like learning who to become from 9th grade to 12th grade. And I think I found friends for life there. So I would say school probably made me.
Which is the one memory that you have from your school that actually made you?
I think not easy to answer, but there's a lot that happens in school that I feel like shapes you, especially the time that you spend with people who become lifelong friends. But I have to say one memory that shaped me would be we basically had a business pitch competition, and I created a business back then of a smoothie bar because I thought that they didn't exist in India and that they should. So like a cloud kitchen type of format. And this was when I was in 10th grade, and this is a very long time ago. So I feel like that we didn't win the pitch competition, but I think just pitching and learning how to create a business plan, that I remember that shaped me to a certain extent because they really liked the idea. And I was a little shocked because I never thought that I could even go in that direction.
So, why did you not do that idea? Execute it.
Because they didn't choose it at the end of the day for the competition. So I thought, okay, maybe it's not that good. But I remember in my class, it was one of the good ideas. And it gave me a little bit of confidence that I'm not just a writer or an art student, which is what I was told I was, because I wasn't very good at math or business or economics at that time.
Okay, so before Fix My Curls, before Anshita, the founder, you wrote a poetry. You self published it, and it was called Love Comes Full Circle. And this was at 19. So, can you be honest? Was this poet the real you or just a founder in costume?
I was never a founder, always a poet. So I have to say the founder is the costume I've worn, the poet is the real person.
Can you read a line from the poetry?
I can. I have one for you guys. So, 1 second. Yeah. It's called History. This was about my grandmother. So it starts, my grandmother tells me age-old stories, woven in pages that sit still for decades. As she speaks, she sits still in her decades. She speaks of a man, he sounds listless like the wind, listless like your kiss, I think. History does repeat itself.
What were you thinking while writing this? What was in your mind? What was the thought process?
So this was about the way that my nani talked about my nanu. And I realized that I had felt some semblance of it, and that it was almost like history was repeating itself, because she would tell me stories of how she fell in love, and I felt I was experiencing the same thing at a similar age.
So this was the poetry you wrote at 19. Is there any other poetry you wrote last in the recent times, where you actually wrote a poem, not a caption?
I think the last time I wrote a poem was probably 2021. I have a page on Instagram, which not a lot of people can find, but I was actively posting poems way after releasing this poetry book. So it's all there on the internet. I just, yeah, I guess it is there if you want to find it.
Can you read some of it?
I think there's one that like did well on Instagram because I really thought that I'll be a poet. So let me just see if I can find this page. Yeah, okay. Mil to gaya. So the last post was May 24th, 2019, actually. So I think a few months after releasing the book, I pretty much stopped publicly writing. And then I think most of the things I must have written must have been in my notes. But there was this poem, I think the last one. Not all earthquakes leave you shaken, yet show you had been standing still all your life.
Can you explain the depth of it?
I think I had just met a few people at the time that made me realize that going to college wasn't the only option and that I had been standing still, assuming that I had to follow a path that was set out for me. And when I wanted to drop out, most people were very against it. But there was some that sort of came in like an earthquake does and kind of shook something new into me and told me, no, I think you're doing the right thing. Like, this is maybe the path you have to take. But not everyone is like that. Most people are like, "Arey, jaisa chal raha hai, chalne do. Why do you want to change things up?" So I think at the time, my life had felt that way. So because I made a very big decision to drop out.
You've been talking about curly hair for 6 years. Tell me this, do you still find it interesting or is it just a job for you?
Some parts of it are still really interesting, like making new products and meeting real people. But the rest of it, of course, have become systems. And I can't help that. If you want a business to grow big, it becomes more than just coming to office every day and having fun. A lot of it becomes as serious as you're paying for somebody's child to go to school and then college and then their loans. So at this point, yes, it's a business more than just having fun. I think 70% of it is a business and 30% of it is now purely my passion.
There are a lot of questions that people ask you about Fix My Curls. And which is the one question that you're absolutely sick of answering?
If the market is big enough, I think commonly people will just ask me with the assumption that it's a niche. So why would you build in a niche? Hasn't it been really hard? And I try to explain to them that I don't see it as a niche, which is why I don't think it's hard. And that's why I'm building in it. So I think I'm sick of being told the market doesn't really exist and to justify that I think it does.
Got it. And which is that one question that you wish people asked you more?
I wish they asked me more about how we educate people and maybe how we build community.
So, Anshita, how did you convince your parents to drop out of UG?
Well, I came back to take the semester, not really off. I came back for a winter break. And it was during that time that some stuff happened in my personal life. I got into a car accident. I was already struggling with my mental health. And at that time, my parents themselves said, maybe you should take a semester off and stay home and think about what you want to do, because I physically wasn't able to step on a flight. I think being in an accident kind of changes you because you're like, oh, life is very short and it was a pretty bad accident. So that was the first step of them saying themselves, take a break. But after that is when I started working on Fix My Curls as a project. And August was the month in 2019 when it made real money. And September was when I was scheduled to fly back. So when it made real money, they saw that. And I was convinced I could run this business from college. And honestly, they were the ones that said that maybe this is worth looking into. Maybe you should study in Delhi or Gurgaon. But they were never convinced that I should completely stop studying. Although that is what I did. I kept pushing it. And eventually they kept seeing the money come in and that I was working every day. So I wasn't sitting at home. So they knew that, okay, even though she's not studying, she is technically learning. So that's what they believed in.
Got it. So would you recommend the same thing to other students in India?
No, never. I would never recommend that you just randomly drop out. I think if you have the privilege, if your parents can afford to fund your dream, or maybe if you have the savings to fund that dream, it could be a potential idea. But mostly, I just think you can finish your studies, you can start afterwards. If you've already put in time and effort there, it's not advice I would just freely give like people do on the internet. I think if you do happen to drop out, it's a great headline, but is it necessary to be a founder? No.
In August 2019, you're 19 years old, sitting in Gurgaon, and you decide to launch the hair care brand. Walk me through what was on your mind, what was your routine like, what did that week look like for you?
See, मैंने भी separately शुरू किया, right? I didn't start my business under my mom's roof because she runs her business very differently. She is a founder that has been doing this for 17, 18 years at this point, right? Obviously, her ideologies are different. So I think the main reason somebody doesn't want to work in mama ya papa ka business is because of maybe the way they run it.
The traditional way, ideal
The
way.
traditional and one traditional ideology is कि ऑफिस 10 बजे के पहले पहुंचना ही है. घर से तो काम हो नहीं सकता. अगर आप घर पे बैठे मतलब काम नहीं हो रहा है, राइट? और आपके लोग भी काम नहीं करेंगे. This assumption that you need to sit on top of their head is something that they work with. And maybe it's from their generation. But today, I know that some of my smartest employees are creating dashboards with Claude's help. They can do that from home. Why am I paying for your seat to come here? And it costs them money to drive there, go back home. I just feel from the get-go, I thought very differently about running a business. And the reason why I knew I could start my own, and the only way I would, was if I would do it separately. Doesn't mean I don't respect my mom's business. I do, and I love it. And it's because of her manufacturing capabilities that I can even give people product, right? But the culture I wanted to build was very different. And I personally didn't want to be in office before 10 a.m. So I wouldn't force anybody else to be. And I knew if I did it under her roof that there were certain rules I would have to follow. And I was refusing to follow those rules. So August 2019 was the month that we actually went live with the products. But this journey technically started 6 months prior to that. And every day of those 6 months, I was waking up around 8 a.m. I would go to office with my mom. I had a desk that they gave me and a chair, and I sat there and I would do my own research. I was spending a lot of time with her employees because honestly, I didn't have any friends to go to at the time. Everybody was at college, and they were the ones that were actually helping me learn things like Amazon pe listing kaise karte hai, how do you work Seller Central, how can you create like very basic product display pictures. And this was honestly my daily routine was just going to office and coming back. So technically I was doing like a 9 to 5 sort of a daily routine at the time. So, and at the same time at night, I would spend that time talking to random people on the internet. Ki, if I'm starting a brand, would you buy it? And I spent a lot of time DMing strangers, which in the end helped me a lot. But this was my daily routine, I think. Wake up, go to office, come back, dream, talk to strangers, and go to sleep until it finally came true.
But were you not scared that this would fail?
I was, and the backup plan was college.
Okay.
Yeah. So if it failed, then it was very clear to my parents as well that I would have to go back and study. And this is what all of our relatives, family, friends, my friends, everybody was saying that, okay, you should max give it 1 semester. Otherwise, you'll be 1 year behind everybody. So just be sure about what you want. I think those 5 months showed everybody that this is what I should be sure about. And after that is when more people began to support me. But at that time, I believe failure was the last thing on my mind, I'll be honest with you, because it wasn't that big of a deal. I wanted to do it for very selfish reasons. I wanted the products.
The people that told you that it was a terrible idea, what are their thoughts right now?
They ask me for advice. And they want to know how to do content and how to grow followers and how to build a team and how to hire the best people and then retain the best people, how to raise funds. But nobody expected this out of me, and I can say that pretty confidently. I was not the person that would become a founder and build a business. I was probably the person who they thought would, have a very slow upwards journey of, being a journalist or a writer and hiding behind the shadows. because that's who I also thought that I would be. So I don't blame them. But today they're coming back and asking me for advice, and honestly, I happily give it to them.
Okay, cut to today, Anshita. You're on the Forbes 30 under 30 list. How do you feel about that?
Asia and India. And I feel great about it. It happened very fast, but yeah, it's something that I didn't know would happen, so I couldn't really plan for it.
Do you wear it like a medal or a target?
I wear it like a medal because it's the year that I didn't apply that I got it. So it is a medal. The 4 years prior that I applied every year, nobody ever responded to me. So I would say they finally came around to realizing I should be on the list. I officially wear it as a medal now.
So when you got under that list of 30 under 30 into Forbes, what does your inbox look like right after that?
I think a lot of congratulations and a lot of people feeling a little bit shocked, but also like, oh, of course, you should have been on the list. And a lot of people also asking me, how exactly do you get on a list like this? I think these were a few of the things I was seeing in my DMs.
Was there any downside to this achievement?
I think the downside is people are watching you very closely now, and they want to see you fail or succeed, and they want to see it. So I think you can't help but be a little bit more in the public eye after the list. And truly, before the list, very less people would, I feel like, ask me randomly about my revenue or for mentorship. But after the list came out, I think the flood began after that. So yes, I feel I'm watched more closely now.
Now, Anshita, just answer this in one sentence. What does Fix My Curl actually sell? I don't want the website answer. I want the real one.
Well, we're selling something more than selling, I think showing you a version of yourself that you've always deserved to have, but were told wasn't really possible or isn't really something you should strive to look like at all. That if you can, you should have straight hair. So, what we're selling is a version of you deserve to see. And yes, that includes products.
And what does the word fix actually mean in that Fix My Curls?
So, funnily enough, fix was a word that I heard a lot growing up. And I kept thinking of the word fix as well when I was searching for products myself. How do I fix my frizz? How do I fix how dry my hair is? And I realized it would be probably the keyword that everybody else would search for. And it made sense. It was sticky as a name. And it was counterintuitive to what you would think I would sell you. But it's for that reason that you don't forget it.
But you're trying to sell self acceptance to a generation of women with curly hair. So, how is Fix playing a role here?
I think you still have to fix a certain part of the way you think about your hair. And that's sort of what we're telling you. Although fix overall is a play on the word that we were told is how we should see our hair for a very, very long time. So fix was more of a mockery of what happens when you go into an Indian salon and they say ki aapko ye fix karne chahiye. So I think it comes more from that. We don't actually want you to fix anything. But yeah, I think the name is just playful and it made a lot of sense from a more cultural perspective, in India at least.
But doesn't your brand mission says that you don't need to fix your curls or your curls are not broken? Don't fix them.
I mean, yes, it does. But that's the exact point of having a brand name that plays on something that has a negative connotation. It makes you look into it. And I also know that, see, people in India don't think the way you do. They don't think that you need to embrace your hair. There is a very large gap between how people feel about straight hair and curly hair. And even today, someone who has curly hair is still searching on how to fix them. At the end of the day, I need to be where my consumer is. I can't pretend that they have self-acceptance. I need to know what they're going to search for, and that's the only way they'll find us. Especially 6 years back when curly hair was, solutions were non-existent, right? People assumed कि मेरे बाल frizzy हैं तो ऐसे ही रहेंगे and the only solution is for them to look silky. I think going from that to seeing what the potential that your hair has, that is sort of where the brand falls in. But I don't know, I just love the name. I know that maybe it doesn't fit entirely with embrace your hair, but I just love the name.
So even if you had to rename your brand today, would it still be Fix My Curls? Yes or no?
Yeah, it would be. I just think that it's a very sticky name for me and it holds a lot of memories. And I feel like I'm owning the word fix by taking it into my own hands because for years people used it against us. And now I can finally own it. And it's my IP.
So you're selling shampoos, conditioners, and even leave-in cream, hair butter gels, everything that you're selling. Is it more of a transformation or fixing your hair?
Um, See, I think transformation and fixing your hair kind of a similar ideology. But the way that I would explain it is that my hair looks like this because I'm finally giving it what it needs. These aren't additional products that maybe to you or someone with wavy or straight hair, they would be like, but iski zarurat nahi hai. Hame hai. And I think that is where the gap still is. People think that using a curl cream is a choice. It's not a choice for me. I have to use it because otherwise my hair lacks moisture, and that is just the nature of it and the structure of how our hair grows. So what I need isn't what you need, and the industry convinced us that we don't need it, but finally when we used it we saw that, oh my god, we have beautiful hair. So for us, I think these are products that are need based. It isn't something we made up. But I understand why people think that your 2-step, 3-step routine necessary hai. Just see somebody with curly hair without product and they'll tell you that it's the best change they made in their life.
But is it because they are not accepting themselves? Once they start accepting their own hair, would they still buy your products?
Of course, that's when they'll buy our products because they'll actually see their curly hair come to life. I think before this, haven't you been told when you were growing up that you should brush your hair downwards? If I brush through this, I'll break it. I'll break my own hair. And that's what we were doing since we were children growing up. I was never taught that my hair doesn't need to be brushed down, it needs to be smoothed over with something that's moisturizing. And you can look at the community of Black women because they are the ones that have started this entire movement of using product on your hair and leaving it in. We aren't the ones to start it. But as a community, Indians have always had texture in their hair type. So it was about time, which is also why if you see, oil is one of the largest industries in personal care as well, especially in the south of India. Because basically, the more melanin you have, the more likely it is that you will have a textured hair type rather than completely straight hair. So oil is also used because our hair is so dry. And in the same category of moisturizing products comes leave-in creams, gels. So I think point being that it's not something I can just live without. It's like shampoo for me.
Got it.
It's as important.
Anshita, your post on June 3rd, 2026 said that happy 1 year anniversary to the rebrand that changed everything. Tell me, the phrase changed everything, is it trying to say that your old brand didn't work?
I think the packaging didn't work. The products worked. What was inside was amazing. And that's why we survived for so long. And we were doing well. At one point, we were bootstrapped for 3 years. And I think only when the product is good enough can you even manage to be bootstrapped. But eventually, really great competitors came into the market. And they showed us that we need to up our game. So I think, yeah, we needed a big change. And this did change everything.
But 500 plus digital assets were updated. New logo, new colors, new packaging, new website.
Yeah.
So be honest here, how much of this was strategy and how much was it panic?
I think it was literally 365 days of strategy before the announcement. So what you saw on June 3rd was 1 year in the making. More than that, actually, 1.5 years in the making. So it was all strategy. Everything was very well planned and curated. But I'll tell you where the panic came. The panic came when the product sold much faster than we thought. And we were very literally suffering from success then after that for 6 months because we just could not keep what we had promised in stock. And that was another nightmare that I didn't even think we'd experience that. So yeah, I think the reality is when you do something as big as a rebrand, imagine people have seen your business one way. We changed 1,000 plus assets, not even 500. It was the most brutal year. We were on track to do so many things, but this decision of mine was like very painful for us. But now it is the most beneficial decision because today the opportunities we're getting 1 year later are crazy. But I think this is what happens when you're a founder. You hit the wall multiple times.
Yeah.
You keep banging your head on it, and then you realize the door is right here.
Hmm.
It was right next to you. You just were looking at something else. And that's when the answer comes to you. But it comes with time. I think today everybody is in a hurry to be successful. That is the issue.
So your revenue went from about 8.7 to 21.4 crores in just 2 years. Roughly 145% growth. Give me the real story behind this.
Funding money, that's the real story. You get money, you can pump it into marketing. We also at the time were changing our branding, but we were also launching a lot of new SKUs. So I think general expansion into the market really, really helped. But also naturally at the time, other people in the market were putting a lot of money into the space, which were our competitors. So I think that helped too.
But still, was it the product, the rebrand, or was it just throwing money at performance marketing?
At this point, the rebrand had not happened. And the majority of the money, honestly, we don't throw at performance marketing, we throw at marketplaces. So yes, money was thrown. And at some point you throw money and you realize you should just keep it with yourself. So
Quick commerce is big chunk of your sales. Tell me this honestly, are you building a brand or are you just renting attention at Blinkit and Zepto?
I don't think you have a choice today. The only way to build a brand is to rent attention. And the best place to rent that attention is where the distribution is, which is quick commerce. I would be lying if I said, oh, we want to build a D2C brand. We don't have a choice anymore. Our customers don't want to be on Instagram buying your product for maybe 100 rupees more and they have to wait 5 days. They want a fast discount. They want the product to come to them in the next 15 minutes and they don't have the patience anymore. And I don't blame them. Plus, more than anything, the fact that quick commerce can take you to a tier 2 and tier 3 city without you having to speak to them in their languages or specific to their niches or their cities is wild to me. I think at the end of the day, if we have to rent that attention, might as well. That's the only way today.
And you're also targeting 100 crore. Be honest with me. Is this a real plan or is it just number you have to say to keep your investors happy?
Honestly, 100 crores used to just be a number to keep other people happy. But now that we're getting closer to it, it's a number that I actually really want to achieve. And yeah, I think initially you do say things to make other people happy, to raise money, because you assume you must do a number like this, right? 100 crores, it sounds great. Everybody will feel like you have a more credible large business, right? It'll prove that the market exists. So I think I used to think I have to say these things, but today I truly believe them. And I think once you say something, you tend to start believing it. So dreaming bigger is important. So it's not just a number for them anymore. It's a number for me.
But if you scale so fast, what is the first thing you think will break in your company? The community, you, the product line?
Supply chain, it always breaks. You'll get crazy demand, and that's what we're experiencing right now. And we are literally cut to cut supplying it. We run out, we immediately get more of the product, and then we run out. And every month we are estimating lower than we should be. And we're struggling right now. I think I'm not able to forecast what 100 crores will look like on my supply chain. That's probably the part that I'm not prepared for. We all worry about branding and marketing, but that's the last thing you should worry about. You should actually be really stressed about your warehouse situation, your inventory. Who is going to pack all these extra orders? You have no idea how badly the back end breaks. And that's usually when the front looks the best. So we've rebranded, we look amazing, and now everybody wants us. We just don't have enough to give them fast enough. And people's attention also moves very fast. So they want you today, they may not want you tomorrow. So you need to catch up with the demand. And I think that's something I'm not ready for, because at 100 crores, I can't imagine how much we'll have to ship out.
So how are you working towards this?
Right now, we're trying to go as slow as possible. You might expect that it's been 2 years since we raised money. It's time to raise money again, right? That's usually how the cycle works. But we have made the very conscious decision not to. And it's not like we don't need the money. Last year was a loss-making year for us. I would love some money. But is it going to help the problem we have on the back end? No. Money won't solve that problem. It will be systems. So we're actually slowing down, trying to sort of have horse-blind vision and not look at everybody else and just focus on building a very strong structure with people that I trust. And then good things will happen.
But even L'Oreal, Unilever, and all other big brands have woken up now to textured curly hair products. How does that make you feel like as a founder?
Oh, it makes me feel amazing. It's such a breath of fresh air. Because imagine spending, this is the 7th year of my life, talking to people who are in the industry and can give you the capital to grow your business, which includes marketplaces, right? Telling them ki market hai. Imagine we were on Nykaa when there was no curly wavy category. We have gotten the category subcat created. So we have been around for so long. Today, when L'Oreal and Unilever step in, it's just such a big green flag that we are all going in the right direction and that this market exists. So thank God, because it cuts down my work. And they spend so much money on selling their products, which helps customers find our group of like competitors and brands, right? So I have to spend less.
So basically, they are doing the marketing awareness as well to sell other products.
Yeah, imagine putting up a billboard on the highway is not something I can afford, but they can. And they did. And seeing curly hair on my way to work, never thought I would see that. But it was on a huge billboard. This was when Dove released their curly hair products. And it was a very proud moment for us because at the end of the day, even if you search for curly hair, Fix My Curls is going to show up at some point on your page. So great.
Anshita, you've been 6 years into the D2C space and you know the D2C war is brutal in India. Ads are getting expensive, ROAS is increasing, hundreds of new brands are launching every single day. As a founder, would you recommend today to anyone to start a new business?
I would say be really, really, really careful. I've been a technical D2C founder and now a B2B founder on marketplaces, QCOM. So I've done everything under the sun. And I have to say today, the most expensive thing is grabbing somebody's attention. And that space that you think is easy to have and you'll just pay for a few meta ads, today it is almost 100x more expensive than it used to be. I remember my budget on Meta used to be 5,000 rupees for a month in 2019. The dashboard was easy enough for somebody that has never run a performance marketing dashboard to upload an image and run it as an ad. Today, not only are there extreme restrictions about what you can run as an ad, but also at this point, people will see your ad at least 10 times before they'll actually purchase the product, which means that on an average order value of say 1,200, your CAC, which is the cost of acquiring the customer, will be anywhere between 700 and 800 rupees. And then if you want to minus all of the other costs of running a business, like the rent you pay and the salaries you pay, you have nothing left. So if you are okay running a business that is in a loss for a while, then I guess you're ready for this war because it is very brutal out there. And today, in fact, most marketplaces even are pushing you to go to a purchase order model because they want to be keeping your inventory however much they feel they can keep, and they'll also return it to you if it doesn't sell. So you make no money in those 45-day interim, right? I think it's a lose-lose situation right now unless you know exactly why you're differentiated. You're ready to completely be in losses and lose this game. And you need to be ready to at least fight it out for a decade.
But still, even if someone wants to start a D2C brand, what's the right roadmap according to you?
The right roadmap is that you don't want an exit from this. That is the right roadmap. If you're already planning for an exit, you should look at the statistics of the number of people who actually find an acquisition or an exit or walk away with 100 crores. Today, you can't even really pay yourself a great salary without it being hard on your company. You have to understand that the founder lifestyle looks very fancy on the outside, but it looks fancy because I've been doing it for 6 years. but a lot of it is just you doing all of the work, right? And I think that's what people don't get. Oh, I'm a founder, so I tell other people what to do. No, you're not going to tell anybody what to do unless you prove that you can do it yourself. That's what makes a good founder. So you need to be ready to really slum it out, honestly. And I think people don't see that. So the right roadmap is be mentally prepared for this to completely fail. Don't expect an exit. Do it because you can take it slow, and good opportunities will come your way because you can increase your base for opportunities by just being available and online. But would I say that it's going to be easy, and would I recommend it? God, no. I would say do your job and run it at the same time because you need your salary to come from somewhere because it's not going to come from your business. Please tell me any business that has touched 100 crores in 2 years, go to Reddit and read about whether they are fulfilling their orders.
No one.
They're not able to because that's where supply chain completely breaks down. No, you can't, right? Or unless you come from a legacy family, right? And then you touch 100 crores, tab to aapka plan tha. And that is a very good founder as well. I don't think it's bad to use your legacy properly, right? It's not bad. You have privilege. You actually use it to
Use
build a
it.
business.
Actually use it.
Good job, right? But those that requires so much money that you don't see on the back end to prepare. Like, just to hire people to pack your products is a journey because they don't know what tube this is and what tube this is. वो कुछ भी डाल देंगे और वो चला गया फिर customer के पास. It's small things like this. So you need an army of people behind, but the person you see is the founder. And they have to represent everything, right? They can't show you what's broken. But I think today, the best founders are the ones that show what's broken.
Let's start the lie detector test. You have 3 options: yes, no, or I deny to answer. Have you ever used a competitor's product and secretly thought it was better than yours?
Yes.
Have you ever launched a product you personally weren't fully happy with?
Yes.
All right. Is there a Fix My Curls product you wouldn't use yourself at all?
Yeah. Not made for me.
Do you actually have curly hair days where you give up and tie it up?
Yeah. Yes. I do.
All right. Have you ever regretted naming the brand Fix My Curls?
Yes.
Why?
When investors had an issue with it because they were like, this means you'd forever be a curly hair brand.
Do you regret dropping out of college?
No. College wasn't for me.
Have you ever considered selling Fix My Curls?
I deny to answer.
Have you received an acquisition offer in the last 12 months?
I deny to answer.
Have you ever cried in your own office?
Yes.
Is there a competitor whose product you secretly think is better than yours?
No.
Have you lost sleep over a 1-star Nykaa review?
No. होता है.
All right. Have you ever ghosted an investor?
Yes. I have.
Okay. Have you ever hired someone purely because they were a fan of the brand and regretted it?
Yes.
Who is it?
I deny to answer.
Okay, Anshita Mehrotra, you've been in this room for 60 minutes and I've thrown every charge I had at you. Before I make this call, I have one deal for you, which none of the founders get in this interrogation. It's a plea deal. One question, one answer, and that's it. If you give me the real answer, you walk out of this room. Tell me the reality. There's a female founder right now trying to build a business. She's launching soon. Which is that one unfiltered advice that you will give her?
One unfiltered advice I'd give her, I think, drown out all of the noise and stop asking for other people's opinions because you don't trust your own. I think it's really common for us to have imposter syndrome as women because it's not really ingrained in us when you're a kid that you're going to run a very successful business. That's not exactly what you're told. So I would say imposter syndrome is the one thing that will probably kill your business before anything else will because you'll be too scared to tell people what you're building. And I think that's the one noise you'll have to shut down and other people will add to it. So you're not an imposter. You can build this business. What you're doing is real and you're doing it all on your own. You deserve to reap the fruits of your labor. But if you keep listening to other people's opinions, it's going to be really, really hard to get anywhere. So I would say most honest advice is you didn't need their opinion. You know the answer. Just follow that truth. You know it. I wish someone had told me this like a long time ago.
Thank you so much for your advice. Now it's time to make the call. Anshita Mehrotra, of all the charges brought against you in this room today, you are not guilty.